Good. Call to order the City Council meeting for Monday, March 6th, 2023. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, roll call, Amanda.
Jeff Dalkey.
Here.
Bill LeClaire.
Here.
Darla LeClaire.
Here.
Tim Petrie. Bonnie Shimalunas.
Here.
Scott Steckmarkisser.
Here.
Adam Wachowski.
Here.
All right, that brings us to number 4. Everyone is here that is supposed to be here. Jason Ring, he has departed from council for understandable reasons, and that is coming up later on our agenda. And Tracy Coach is on vacation. She's not going to be joining us. She's enjoying some sun, hopefully. Hopefully it's sunshine and warm where she is. So everyone else is present. We can skip over number 5. There is no public hearing. Giving us to number 6, input from the public. Anyone wishing to address the council on anything that's on this agenda or something they'd like to see on a future agenda, please step up to the podium. My right, your left. State your name and address for the record. Input from the public.
My name is William Otto. I live at 1800 Jefferson Street here in Two Rivers. I think the Two Rivers Family Swim Center needs a remodel because their swimming pool it doesn't have like a zero tolerance for older people that are like 75 and 80 years old that are wheelchair bound. They can't safely get in and out of the big pool. I think it'll probably be close to $2 million, but it needs some. I think it needs some public funding because there are a lot of people that enjoy going to the Tourist Family Swim Center. That's community.
Hey, Jim, I agree. It's a tough one. We've battled that one on council here for quite a while and had guests from Tourist Family Swim Center join us for a couple of those meetings in the past. We welcome them back again because we certainly want to see them as a community succeed, and we'd like to do anything that we can within realm, obviously, to help them out. So I know we've spoke to a few of them, and maybe I can try to reach out to one of those contacts again and see kind of where we stand. So thank you for that update, Jim. Anyone else? Input from the public? All right, seeing none, we're going to go on to number 7, which is council communications. Any letters or other communications from citizens that anyone would like to share with the rest of council?
I got a couple. Some of them were for the snowstorm when we didn't really plow, when we had the light fluffy snow, and then we got the rain. And I got a lot of calls and complaints about that. I actually got a phone call at 5:30 in the morning to go push somebody out. So, yeah, that one wasn't quite handled right. I don't think, especially with the rain coming. I understand that we didn't want to do anything because of the overtime factor, but with the rain coming, it ended up being a sloppy mess. But at least they did take care of everything then right away on Monday. And I also talked to several people this past weekend about replacing the vacant seat for council, and all 3 of them that I had talked to would rather have a special election than council appoint, which we have done a couple times now.
Anything else? Okay. I didn't know if you were pausing thinking or anybody else. Council communications. I did. Okay. I did receive a few. One I had addressed with DPW already, and that was with the intakes on the stormwater when we got that rain after that snow, which I was assured that from Matt that everything was done possible. Guys were called in. They were working on cleaning up those sewers with the front end loader and the dump truck. And obviously it was just too hard to keep up. We got thousands of sewers within the city and we can't really get to them all at the same time. And it was a huge problem that came on us like that. Nothing we could have really prevented. I know Matt also said they called in some extra people and they put some plows on trucks just to plow it away from the sewers for a temporary fix. And they did everything they could. I know they're working 10, 11, 12-hour days to try to get that cleaned up. So I know some people were frustrated, but I want to reassure them that the DPW was really doing everything they could. So the other one I got was at the intersection of 22 and Lincoln Street. I did receive that letter. So from Mr. Glenn, I'm going to butcher that, Mitan, Mighton. I did receive that, and I know, talking to Greg, that they were already looking into that. So I don't know where they are on it, but I'm sure they are taking the steps, and it might be coming. Is that going to be something that's going to come to the Public Works Committee, or is it something that's going to be handled internally?
I received the same letter, and I've reached out to Manitowoc County and additionally, police chief here and the DOT. There is a process that we could go through if we really wanted to. The DOT could do a intersection evaluation, but at the end of the day, the number of crashes that have occurred over the past since 2015 is around 8, and none of them really impact the or are caused by the actual stop signs or the traffic flow. So initial gut reaction is basically respond back, thank you for your concern, but we're going to do nothing. But I want to evaluate it a little bit more and see, not just do a knee-jerk reaction, but take a look at what's actually being done there or what's there and so on and so forth. It gets a little complicated because coming from the east or westbound movement is actually County Trunk O. So that's county, and then you have connecting highway, which is both us and DOT. So it's continuing, and then yes, we will do an internal review and then probably bring it forward to Public Works.
Thank you so much.
And with that will be ultimately reported back at City Council. But I can certainly recall when Lincoln Avenue, Highway 42 was reconstructed from 22nd Street north. There was an assessment, a review of that intersection at that point. It is a little awkward when you have a state highway making a 90-degree turn at a non-signalized intersection. You know, how do you sign it properly? It's not the norm. We got that somewhat too, where 310 comes into town and Hawthorne goes on to 14th, but that will be reported back. DOT got right on it because in addition to it going to the council president, it went to the DOT secretary's office. So,
okay.
Yeah, the region is quite aware of it as well.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Jeff.
I did forget one. I got a call about I got several calls on this one, but this has been over time. Speeding on Forest Hills Drive. Apparently they fly down there on Forest Hills.
Forest Avenue or Forest Hills?
Forest Hills Drive. I think that's the one if you're going down 45th Street towards 147. I think it's the last street.
Northwest corner of the city. That'd be the last,
Yep.
the last
That's the one.
right on your to the north.
Yeah.
You're headed. Yeah. Oh, Chief Minor, I'm sure make note of that and see what we might be able to do up there. I don't know if we've ever deployed the digital signs up there for starters, the portable speed signs.
Usually not this time of year because of the batteries and everything else,
Yeah.
but definitely something to look at.
I forgot all about it, Ben, otherwise I would have contacted you earlier, but I'm just going through some of my notes and I remembered.
Thanks for sharing that.
Anybody else? All right, on to 8, which is council reports from boards, commissions, or committees. Anyone have anything they need to report on from their respective boards, commissions, or committees? Darla.
Okay, Environmental Advisory Board, we're just keep on going. We're waiting for the TMDL, the DNR TMDL to be done so we can proceed more with the stormwater ponds. So right now we're still doing our educational thing. And on February 7th, we had Titus Selheimer, who spoke on the health of the rivers in the lake, algae bloom and forget-me-not creek. And that was a very interesting very interesting talk. And then the next presentation is actually this week on Thursday. And it's going to be Nick Vandehey of McMahon Associates, clean water, stormwater runoff, and DNR requirements. So that's all over at the library, 6 to 7:30. So
Perfect.
that's what we're doing with the EAB. And then for Main Street, just a reminder about our banner art. Canvases are due next week, the 15th, I believe. And we still have a couple sponsorship spots left. So if you want to get involved with this, please get in touch with the Main Street office. And then the great Two Rivers Trivia Contest is this Friday. Jason told me that they have 12 teams right now and room for a few more. And then we got some new businesses coming into town. Sweet Fire Tobacco opened last week. We've seen that one. But the Paper Crane Bookstore and Dice Goblin Games, both planning to open April 1st.
Nice. Good.
So we'll,
It's exciting stuff.
yeah, I know.
A lot of Facebook hits on that book one. I saw that. I didn't see the Dice and Goblins one, but I did see the bookstore. A lot of hits on that one. That's great to see. Was quite a few hits on that one. So good stuff.
That's what's up.
Awesome. Anybody else? Bill.
We had aging this morning. It's a few people wanted to know where the buildings where Hanson the Flores property is. Friends that want to move it to Rivers.
Well,
As I think has been reported to the council presently or previously, things are not proceeding there at this point with that proposed development, which was to be 45 units due to issues that are of public record related to a restrictive covenant that was placed on the site, which has created a challenge. So the city had gone through the zoning process of creating a TIF district, negotiating a development agreement with the developer. I guess I do want to get the word out there that the city did everything it was supposed to, but an obstacle was encountered. And at this point, the project isn't moving forward.
And it's all because of the sign problem. Blocking the sign.
But all I can say is my understanding it relates to a restrictive covenant that is on the development site. Yep.
Legal matter or anything.
Probably. I can't speak to what the developer may or may not be doing about it, but things are at a standstill right now. With the proposed 45 unit apartment development.
Anything else, Bill? Anyone else? All right, then we're on to the city manager's report, and Greg.
Okay, first up, I'd like to have our city engineer, public works director, Matt Heckenleibel, come forward and introduce his new right arm, public works engineering administrative assistant.
Where to start with Sue? Sue is a somewhat semi-local individual. She was born in and attended school in Manitowoc. We won't hold that against her too much, but she did get wise and married an individual from Two Rivers, so we'll keep that as a positive. She went off to school to UW-Whitewater to gain her bachelor's in business administration, emphasizing in office administration. Came back and worked for that little community to the south of us, Manitowoc, for about 30 years, and did things from customer service, accounts payable, accounts receivable, fuel billings, various reports and analysis, dealing with various aspects of budgeting, training, development, document management, and is very proficient in various software packages that we utilize here at the city as well. Upon arriving at Two Rivers 2 weeks ago, Sue jumped right in, answering the phones regarding snow complaints and documenting those. And then she took on the monumental task of dealing with all the paperwork piles that are down in DPW, and we're trying to reorganize that and keep us in a nice digital aspect. So with all that being said, I'd like to introduce Miss Susan Riley and welcome her aboard to our team.
Terrific.
I recognize it. Thanks for being interested. Appreciate it.
Sue brings a whole lot of relevant experience from engineering and Department of Public Infrastructure in Manitowoc, so mighty glad to have her. Okay, next up, in my city manager's report for tonight. It's still winter, but we do have more beach visible at Neshota Beach, so thanks Jeff Dawson for this photo that has graced our Facebook page. First up, staffing updates, because we don't run without people. Fire chief applications are due until the position is filled. We will, however, be updating the Police and Fire Commission at its next scheduled meeting on March 22. There is some application activity that I think bodes well for moving ahead on that position. I'll leave that to the Police and Fire Commission, but I think it's looking good there. There is a vacancy, as you know, in the position of Recreation Supervisor. Interviews are underway and some background checks also underway on finalist candidates there. Hope to be able to wrap things up there by the close of this week. Director of Tourism applications closed last Friday. We actually began interviews last week, continued them today. Initial interviews have been completed. We're hoping to wrap up backgrounding and have a decision there by the end of this week. That's on the full-time position. Again, we just remind folks that is funded entirely through room tax, which is a budget under the jurisdiction of the Room Tax Commission, whose members are approved by City Council. And that position is, however, a city employee. So city employee, city benefit package, funded exclusively from room tax. And we are moving along in creation of the 501c6 organization that will be our local tourism entity as this plays forward. We anticipate a contract between that C6 and the Room Tax Commission for providing those services. In turn, the Room Tax Commission having an agreement with the city for provision of the staffing for that activity. There is also applications are also being received for a half-time position of tourism media and marketing coordinator. Those applications are being reviewed. We have not yet commenced interviews for that position, but have had a pretty good response there. Both of these positions would report on a staff level to the community development director. So Elizabeth's involvement in that recruitment selection is integral.
Sorry, I may not have caught it, but tourism, media, and marketing coordinator, that's half-time?
That is, we've advertised it at 20 to 25 hours per week. So yeah, half to 50 to
Over.
60%.
Sure. Okay.
And then Public Works Utility Person, Travis Christensen, as you know, was recently promoted to Street Superintendent from the position of Utility Person. And those interviews are in process for both internal and external candidates for that position, looking to get that filled soon. If it ends up being an internal promotion, well, then we'll soon be advertising for a Public Works Maintenance person. So sometimes it takes a few steps before everything gets filled. Would remind the community that the city invites any local elementary or preschool students to come here to council and lead in the Pledge of Allegiance at council meetings. We'll post this on Facebook shortly, as well as a reminder encouraging people to contact Lisa in the city manager's office to get lined up for that. It's always great when we can have local youngsters here leading in the pledge. Of course, we have a city council election in April with 3 seats on the council on the ballot. There are 2 candidate forums that have been scheduled that will be held here in the council chambers. This week on Thursday the 9th, the League of Women Voters has invited candidates to a forum at 7 p.m. People are welcome to come here and watch the candidate forum live in chambers. It will likewise be streamed on the city Facebook page and on YouTube, and available for viewing after the fact on YouTube. Next week, Tuesday, March 14, the TRBA, Two Rivers Business Association, is sponsoring a second candidate forum likewise to be held here in chambers. And again, folks are welcome to attend in person or log in from the comfort of home or work and view that via live stream. And again, that will be available after the fact as well on both the city Facebook page and the city website. City isn't sponsoring these, simply providing the venue and the means to get these sessions out to the community. As a reminder, there are 6 candidates on the ballot. City councils members in Two Rivers are elected at large. In other words, the whole community gets to vote on each council position, and the names on the April ballot appear in the order presented here. Dean LaRose, Ron Abney, Darla LeClaire, Bonnie Shimalunas, Shannon Derby, and Adam Wahusky.
And 2 times for the TRBA.
Oh dear, did we have that?
On here it's 6:30, up there it's 7.
Okay, I apologize. Do you recall, I thought, are people supposed to gather at 6:30 and it airs at 7?
I believe that's what it was.
Okay, we better make certain of that, team. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. My understanding is they both are 7 o'clock airtime. I'm sorry for that error. What we think is an error.
The invitation that I came out loud. The invitation I received was from 6:30 to 8:30 for the TRBA, Tourist Business Association. That comes from the TRBA. I know Bonnie in this email chain also said she didn't receive that either.
You've not been contacted at all? Not phone call?
I don't think Ron has either.
Not a phone call, nothing.
Yeah, and I know that's run through TRBA. And again,
Voters.
I didn't see any
Legal witness, she said that. We should call
I
him.
responded the way I
Very nice.
knew.
I know.
I knew people.
I know the city clerk provided the contact information to TRBA, so we'll circle back and see what's going on there. Again, this isn't the city's baby. We don't organize these events. Just try to provide a location. So follow up on that. Absent voter ballots can be requested online at the city clerk's office. Can they be cast now?
No,
Amanda?
they start on, I believe, the 21st, 2 weeks before the election.
Okay. They can make application currently. Central Park West 365 update. I'm sure you saw some of the photos of demolition of the old stage structure. Vinton Construction took care of that on March 1st. Site was being graded on March 2nd. Koenig Construction is expecting to start work shortly. Koenig is the subcontractor to Vinton for the Park Pavilion building, and that should be initiated shortly. I know they're waiting on some soil compaction information in preparation for construction. And again, the reason this was done as a change order on Vinton's contract is it was a whole lot cheaper. They're pretty efficient with the big equipment they have. It was a whole lot cheaper than our estimate would do for doing it with our own crews. I think that's a $14,000 change order. Just an update on Sandy Bay Highlands home construction. If you've driven up there this winter, you've seen several houses getting wrapped up. Also pleased to report that we did close on the sale of 2 lots last week on February 28th to Lakeshore Residential LLC. They've built a couple of spec homes at the subdivision that have already been sold, and they purchased 2 more lots adjacent to each other at the corner of Sandy Ridge and Lake Breeze. Sale price was at the list price of $32,000 per lot. No discount there. A total of 6 lots remain available in the subdivision, 2 in phase 1 and 4 in the phase 2 area. Darrell mentioned earlier the ongoing public information series by the Environmental Advisory Board. The next one is this Thursday, March 9, at the library, and on stormwater runoff at ponds. I'm sure they'll be speaking about the TMDLs as well, for East and West Twin Rivers, total daily loading stats. And the speaker will be Nick Van de Heye, who has been the city's primary contact on stormwater issues through the years and is senior municipal and water resources engineer and a vice president with McMahon Associates. And that's, of course, our riverfront pond on the former Eggers property. Main Street activities, the Great Trivia Contest this Friday in the Community House Gym. They may have room for another team or two. I'm not sure, Darla, if you know.
That's what you
That's
told
what
me,
you
yeah,
heard?
there's still room.
Okay. It's always a fun night. And then the Two Rivers and Manitowoc's Parks and Rec Departments cooperating on a city-to-city leprechaun hunt, March 15 to 22. Would like to remind folks that the Advisory Rec Board and our Parks and Rec Director and Department are looking for more resident input on the Neshota Park Master Plan that has been worked on by the Advisory Rec Board over several public meetings now. And the next ARB meeting is actually, Tuesday, March 21, over in the Casca room at the Senior Center. There's the opportunity to drop in and review the plan with staff and members of the Advisory Rec Board through the evening that day. There's also an online survey on SurveyMonkey that you can complete, and that's actually open until April 2. Okay, so
I took this survey prior to coming here. It's very easy to use. It only took like a minute or two. I know it's on the city's Facebook page, the link, so it's real simple.
public input is valued, and there's been a fair amount of time devoted to public input at the Advisory Rec Board meetings the last 2 to 3 months. It was mentioned earlier, new local businesses. These are from the Main Street Directors Report that went out today, and also from Facebook presence of these various businesses. Phenomenal Will Training, fitness trainer that at 1604 Washington Street is the same building as GJ's Salon on Washington Street, now open. Sweet Fire Tobacco over here in Unit 2, as they call it, or Suite 2 of the former Family Video Building, 1803 Washington Street. Tobacco, cigarettes, vaping supplies, cigars, pipes, Sweet Fire Tobacco, now open. A lot of buzz about this one, opening April 1st, and that's not a joke, not an April Fool joke. Paper Crane Bookstore, a local independent bookstore, opening April 1 at 1610 Washington Street. They've had a presence out there with a pop-up bookstore at Grow It Forward, at the Maritime Museum, at a number of locations. Some folks that recently relocated to the area. They've got a ton of enthusiasm and should be a very nice addition to the downtown. Dice Goblin Hobbies, 1308 Washington Street. That's the building just this side of the Washington Street bridge. Chris Darrington's building there or just south of Subway, if you will. They're likewise scheduled to open April 1 based on their Facebook. I would also point out that Hartman's Bakery has announced that they now have firm dates for their reopening. Late July, there was a fire at Hartman's Manitowoc Main Bakery, so that shut down retail operations, not only in Manitowoc, but in Two Rivers and Plymouth, where they have affiliated stores. And the Two Rivers location is reopening on Tuesday, March 14th. So it's been a long slog for that locally owned business. So encourage people to stop by, wish them well, and maybe buy some treats. You can work them off at the new fitness trainer. Also wanted to share, because this isn't just Manitowoc news, Grow It Forward serves the Two Rivers community as a community food center. Their hydroponics are their hydroponically grown greens are served at some local restaurants, and they've been their director's been very helpful as far as willingness to work with the Environmental Advisory Board on front yard gardens, home produce gardens. They incurred some pretty significant flooding damage last week during the rain and snow melt. And if you go to their Facebook page, you can read about, failing sump pumps and some of the flooding that incurred. And they've got some fundraising activity going on if you go to the Grow It Forward Facebook page. We also want to point out, Andrew Sukawati, our water director, reminded me today that we still have some limited opportunities for lead water service lateral replacement this year in 2023. The only homeowner grant assistance that we will have this year, except for, the Lincoln Street reconstruction project, not Lincoln Avenue. That one we have funding for assisting with all of the homeowner private side laterals. But we only got about 20 grants available for other scattered site locations. And that's money that has to be spent, the work done, the money spent by the end of April. So if you've been on the fence, maybe you've done some preliminary looking at replacing your water service, the city has the funding to replace it up to the shutoff, up to the right of way. If you're interested in pursuing a grant this year at one of those scattered sites, please contact customer service here at City Hall, the number shown here, as soon as possible for that. Andrew, anything else to share on that?
There won't be any funding after the April 15th deadline. So I would suggest if anybody's thinking about it, try and get it in right away.
When you say April 15, that's when we want to see applications because the work has to be done.
That's when we'd like to finish.
Okay, so I stated April 30. That's our drop dead deadline.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And that's my report for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, legislative and intergovernmental
sorry.
update,
Yeah.
if I can speak.
Didn't have the slides on that, but you've probably heard that both the Republican legislative leadership in discussions leading up to the governor's budget presentation and Governor Evers in his budget proposal that was presented a couple weeks ago have spoken to the need for increased funding to help local governments fund their services. The shared revenues program, that is a big chunk of our revenue here for our general fund budget, has been either frozen or cut for the last quarter century or so. It used to be over 10% of state general purpose spending. I don't recall the percentage right now, but I think it's 3 or 4% of the state's total spending. Council President Wahusky has reached out to the governor's office to convey concerns about funding, notably funding for all city operations, but notably to address our needs in the public safety arena, which I think both the governor and legislative leadership have spoken to. And we do have, thanks to Adam's efforts, a conversation tomorrow morning scheduled with the governor's regional liaison for Northeast Wisconsin. Just some numbers that we plan to share during that discussion. This shows some history going back to 2020 of shared revenues in the city of Two Rivers budget. So we show it at 5-year intervals up to from the year 2000 to 2020, and then we jump ahead 1 year to 2023, the current year budget. And you can see there that 23 years ago, we received just over $4.1 million in shared revenues from the state. That amounted at that time to 43.2% of our general fund budget. For folks at home, general fund is police, fire, ambulance, public works, parks and rec, city administration, those kind of expenditures. Today, this year, we're actually receiving less in dollar terms, about $150,000 less than we did in the year 2000. Shared revenues accounts for 34.7% of the budget. Again, it was over 43% back in 2000. Today, it's 34.7%. And that the balance has been made up basically by new fees, by, I'd say, modest property tax increases, but the state has really stepped back from its historic role in helping to fund those services. And again, this is not to pick on public safety, but public safety, I think we all agree, is job one. Hopefully it's not the only job, because parks and plowing the streets and other things are important. But public safety back in 2000 and that's police, fire, and ambulance, constituted just under 40% of general fund spending for the city, 39.4%. The most recent budget, it's at 53.4%. So, and again, those departments have sharpened their pencils. They've seen reductions in staffing, but that also shows you that the balance of the general fund has had to show even more restraint or more cutbacks to keep things balanced. So this is at least one thing that we want to share with these folks. And the message to them and to the governor's office and to our area legislators certainly has to be, first, do no harm. You know, it's great if you're talking about a bigger pot of money, but the devil's in the details of how you distribute it. And first of all, we're already receiving less from the state to fund city operations than we did 23 years ago. First of all, please don't be cooking up some funding scheme that would result in any less funding to any city, whether it's Two Rivers, Janesville, Ashland, whatever. Because shared revenues historically was a redistributive program. It went in greater proportion to low tax base cities, generally older cities, full service cities. And there's going to be a lot of politics around how any increased pot of money gets distributed. So stay tuned, and I hope we can invite both Andre Jacques and Shay Sortwell back here as the budget process progresses for an update on this. Adam, anything else on that?
Yeah, this is a real big deal. I mean, we ship a lot of money off to the state and we're getting less back. At the same time, the waterways are one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow as well. They are the state's waterways. It's for the whole state, but yet we're picking up the bill to protect them, to keep them, to protect our shores, and we need more help. And the same thing with public safety. I mean, we get people from all over the state, all over the United States, and we need help. Again, we ship a lot of money off to the state and we don't get a whole heck of a lot back. Just like all other small communities, we have issues too. And it seems like some of the big communities get a lot more money, especially when it comes, in my opinion, from DOT, which is another thing I plan to talk about in tomorrow's meeting. So stay tuned. Again, that meeting we have tomorrow morning, and hopefully we have a better update on that.
Thank you. Also, last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, our electric utility director, Brian Delman, and I were in Washington, D.C. as part of a Wisconsin contingent of 50 plus people from various municipal utilities at the American Public Power Association's annual legislative rally. We, as a group, had all of the Wisconsin reps had meetings with Senators Baldwin and Johnson, and then those of us from the 6th Congressional District had what turned out to be a fairly brief hallway meeting with Congressman Grothman, because he was in session with the Oversight Committee, of which he is a member. Some of the key messaging that both American Public Power and our local state organizations, the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin, MEUW, and our energy supplier, WPPI Energy, were communicating were that the utilities in Wisconsin are working hard on reducing their CO2 emissions, but give us some breathing room. That translates into rates, and moving too quickly on any single solution doesn't make a lot of sense. It's good to have I'm paraphrasing, but it's good to have a diversified energy portfolio, as we have with WPPI, which buys a piece of the output from Point Beach Nuclear, is buying solar based on the output at one of the new solar farms out there, but also has natural gas, hydro, some coal, a good variety of sources in its portfolio. And we think those decisions are best made at the individual utility level as we move toward those goals. There was discussion of the need to enact energy permitting reform. So things like new pipelines and new transmission lines around the country aren't held up for year after year after year through regulatory and environmental review processes. We heard that was one of the things that Senator Manchin from West Virginia was promised when he gave his vote to some of the Biden administration's initiatives, and that Senator Manchin, along with some others, are interested in seeing some action on that. Third point was to help alleviate the supply chain crisis, possibly funding some defense production work authorization or Production Act authorization. We heard from utilities that are looking at substation size transformers that they're looking at waits of up to 4 years for that, and then aren't getting American-made transformers, but are holding their breath on Mexican, not with all due respect, Mexican-made transformers. And Brian can speak to it, certainly even for the typical pole-mounted transformers like we have throughout our system, it's a 2-year wait these days. And at the same time, we were told that the Department of Energy is advocating for higher efficiency standards for transformers, which might be a lovely idea, but at a time when there are these kind of delays in getting current state-of-the-art transformers, probably not the best time to be tweaking that. And this really speaks to reliability issues and the ability to serve new developments. There was discussion about strengthening partnerships for a more secure grid as we look at cybersecurity and the physical hardening of some of the assets. You've heard about, sabotage down in the Carolinas and other areas around the country on electric utility infrastructure. And then honoring commitments that the feds have made in Build America and some of the clean energy initiatives to local units. There's some major utilities out there, publicly owned utilities, that have gone forward with major investments predicated on refundable credits and federal funding. And there's some are finding some heartburn in actually receiving that aid. So it was interesting. It's always interesting to have those peer contacts from around the country. We had the chance to talk with some people from California where they're doing green hydrogen initiatives and a lot of things that I encouraged a couple people we met with, will kindly work it out on your nickel and let us know the things that work. So back in the middle of the country, maybe we can take on some of those. So Brian, I don't know if you had anything to add, but overall, it's always good to go out and meet with our elected reps on their turf. You also realize that you're part of the parade of people appearing every day at their offices with different interest groups. But we tend to think this one is a pretty important one as public utilities, representing ratepayers nationwide. And
Brian, can I ask you a question if you come up to the podium, just quick? Just for my own peace of mind and probably for those listening that heard that there's a 2-year wait on transformers that go on our regular pole lines. Is that something that we have stocked? Not that there's going to be a transformer that goes out and we're waiting for 2 years.
We currently do have a supply of.
Is your mic on? Oh, yep.
We do currently have some transformers. We don't have a great surplus, but as I've mentioned in some of the utility committee meetings and stuff like that, we do have good partnerships with other utilities in the state that we can reach out if need be, and it's an emergency. We'd be able to go and find something adequate, even if it had to be oversized for the time being, until we would get whatever transformer we need. But thus the reason talking with new developments, apartment complexes, stuff like this, it's all about a timeline.
even meters.
Electric meters are at a year right now. So.
Real. Okay. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, those mutual aid arrangements are very important. And actually, we got to sit next to folks at one of the meetings from Lakeland, Florida, which, how far back was it? We sent
2004.
2004, crews from Wisconsin, including crews from Two Rivers, responded to Lakeland in the wake of a hurricane that swept through there. Of course, more recently, U.S. Virgin Islands, 2012? 2018. Even. As you know, likewise, Two Rivers and a number of Wisconsin utilities sent crews. And it's good to know that kind of assistance can be mobilized if we're ever on the end where it's needed. So, thank you.
All right, on to number 10, which is the consent agenda. Under A, we have minutes of meetings. There are 3. We have a Police and Fire Commission meeting of February 9th, 2023. We also have an Environmental Advisory Board meeting from February 21st, 2023, and a Public Works meeting of March 1st, 2023. Recommended action is a motion to receive and file. And finally, under B, we have applications and petitions. There are 1. We have an application for a temporary Class B retailer license application for the period of March 10th, 2023 for the Two Rivers Main Street for the Great Trivia Contest at 1710 West Park Street. Recommended action is a motion to approve the application and authorize issuance of the license. The recommended action for the entire consent agenda is a motion to approve the consent agenda with the various actions recommended. Looking for a motion on that. Thank you, Bonnie. Do I have a second? Jeff, thank you very much. Council discussion. See none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. On to 11, City Council formal items. Under A, we have a resolution amending the 2023 capital budgets to reallocate funds budgeted for capital projects. This may change, but the recommended action is a motion to waive reading and adopt the resolution. Greg?
At the last city council meeting, council approved the issuance of 10-year notes for funding the city's 2023 capital projects, various capital projects. Those budgets, as adopted by the council back in December, identified the need for $1,815,000 in total borrowing, general obligation type borrowing, as opposed to utility borrowing, to fund those various projects. In the course of discussions, the finance director and I both recommended that council consider reducing that borrowing by $650,000 and instead utilize $650,000 that was borrowed in a prior year for acquisition of the former Hamilton property. I think that certainly still remains a priority, but it's been delayed beyond what any of us expected. As Thermo Fisher deals with some DNR questions and does further environmental assessment of the property. So council did approve the borrowing resolution, the so-called parameters resolution for borrowing last week with the reduced amount of borrowing identified at $1,165,000. This is the companion piece to that, basically coming back and saying, well, okay, now there is the need to amend the budget to reallocate that $650,000 in borrowed funds. So the various budgets identified here. Excuse me, just because I'm seeing a typo here. This is what I'm doing. First of all, the street construction budget 451 as adopted anticipated $335,000 in proceeds from debt. I'm recommending reducing that by $325,000, which, as you would note, is half of 650. So that would go from 335 down to 10. However, that next line, I'm sorry, should the transfer from other funds budgeted at 0 should go to 325, not 300. That makes sense. So that's self-balancing within that fund. Borrowing down $325,000, transfer from other funds up. So that would be a correction to that line. 451, 49, 233, transfer from other funds. Strike 300,000, 300,000, change each of those numbers. Excuse me. Yeah, strike 300, make it 325 in each case on the resolution. Everybody okay there? Okay. Then likewise, and there's no magic, it's just these were two budgets that had two lumps of borrowing that added up, right? If I'd have gotten the resolution right. Public Works equipment, we anticipated $325,000 as proceeds from debt. Proposed taking that to 0, a reduction of $325,000, but then replacing it with a transfer from other funds, $325,000 as shown. Where does that total of 650 come from? Fund 403, Harbor Master Plan implementation, where the budgeted, there was no budget on the expenditure side for transfer to capital projects, but there would be now at $650,000. So that basically, if ultimately we go ahead with that property purchase, this would short that fund by $650,000. But assuming the council's supportive at that time, we'd be back looking at new borrowing there. So that is the intent of this resolution as corrected.
Okay. Question? Okay. Okay, thank you, Bill. Do I have a second? Tim, thank you very much. Any council discussion? This is a good move on our part. It saves us a lot of interest rate because obviously when we borrowed that $650 in prior years, it was a lot cheaper to borrow it than what it is now. We're not getting that property anytime soon, we don't think, based on some of the DNR issues. So this is smart money.
By the way, on the borrowing for new projects, the 1.165 million, per an email from Baird today, everything appears in order to to price that issue on Wednesday of this week. So assuming they place it within the parameters resolution, otherwise they won't place it, we'll shoot an email out to council advising you of what rate was obtained on that borrowing.
So we have Bill on a first, Tim on a second. This is a roll call vote. Amanda?
Jelke. Bill Leclerc. Darla Leclerc. Tim Petrie. Bonnie Shimalunas. Scott Steckmeister. And Adam Wahusky.
Motion carries. On to B. We have a resolution authorizing loan from State Trust Fund Loan Program to fund TID 17 Developer Grant to the Confluence LLC. Loan term of 20 years at 5.25% annual interest rate, consisting general obligation borrowing of the city. We'll let Greg walk us into this one before we do anything further.
Do have a different recommendation than what appeared on the agenda that went out. Actually, the staff recommendation is for the council to consider a motion to not proceed with approval of the proposed borrowing at this time. We had submitted an application for a request for an application package from the State Trust Fund back in early January. Once that goes out, we have 60 days to bring it back to council and get action on the application. And there's a rate lock during that 60 days, which is nice, at the 5.25% rate that was being offered when we requested the package. But based on discussions with the developer last Friday, which I hasten to say were positive with the folks from the Confluence LLC, they've got some more work to do. They did share, if you look at my memo that was handed out tonight, they did share a general site plan for the two buildings. So there's a question now whether there'll be a phase 1 and phase 2, or they may want to pursue both for some economy when it comes to the cost per unit, but it shows the approximate location of buildings 1 and 2 and some on-site surface parking south of the Eggers site retention pond, which will be retained by the city. They also show a tentative floor plan for a sample plan within the building. And the last page is their concept plan for a rooftop patio that would be a common area usable by tenants in the building. What Kip Golden of the Confluence and their architects shared with Elizabeth and I is that the current plans for the buildings allow for 59 units in either building, 60% of those being 2-bedroom, 40% being 1-bedroom. They are looking at their costs and seeing if it might be feasible to develop both buildings at the same time. Obviously, less cost, you can spread the cost of mobilization and site work over a larger number of units. But I think it's fairly clear from that discussion that timetables for the site plan and the design review are probably going to need to be adjusted in the development agreement. And because if the council approves this and sends it in, and we send it in based on action tonight, will be scheduled in front of the loan committee at the trust fund. If the loan is approved, we'll have 4 months to draw down the proceeds. I would rather give it 2 or 4 weeks and look at submitting a new request for an application packet and start that 60-day clock ticking over again. There may be some interest rate risk there, but the rate for 20-year borrowing from the State Trust Fund today is still 5.25%. The pro formas for this project we ran at 7%, trying to be on the conservative side. But pending some more information and possibly a modification in the project timetable, I would recommend the council vote to not proceed at this time with approving this one.
Okay, so the recommended action is a motion to not proceed with this borrowing.
A quick question. On the agenda,
It
formal
actually is TID 16.
Okay.
It says
my-
17 on the agenda.
Okay.
Yep.
So do I have a motion? Okay, Bill, do I have a second? Thank you, Tim. I saw Tim first. Any further discussion?
Did he say to not adopt? I just want to make sure.
He did. Yep.
All right.
Jeff.
Now, this is just for future down the road on this. If they decide, say we do get the money down the road, and they decide for some reason to pull out, that money comes back to this city, correct?
The way and I don't recall the exact milestones, but the way we had it structured in the development agreement was there were draws as the project progressed. So we wouldn't be turning it over in a lump sum. I think the first payment was to come within a specified time frame after they've paid the city for the parcel. But it would, yes, the loan agreement, the development agreement does have clawback provisions. And remember, the development agreement calls for the city to hold a first mortgage on the site. And that gives us some leverage as well. But we don't need to be borrowing money and having it sit idle and be incurring interest costs on it. I know that wasn't your question, but that's the gist of this.
And another thing, I think that since we could have locked in what today's rates are, if it's gonna be 60 days, if it goes up 2%, I know you have that figured in there, but that should be deducted from what they're gonna get, because they're not ready. You understand what I mean? So let's say we end up with a 2% increase over the next couple of months, that should be deducted from what they get, in my opinion.
Something that can certainly be looked at. I guess I'd want to see the pro forma again and all the information that goes into it before obviously making a decision, but that's certainly something we can take up.
That would be the council's option at that time. I hope to be able to, within the next couple of weeks, get an update to the Personnel and Finance Committee and then update to the full council. As of tonight, I think it's most prudent to not proceed to file this application.
Okay, seeing we are not past, Jeff?
So one more, I'm still not happy that it's gonna be all 2-bedroom apartments, and some ones, we are in desperate need of 3 bedrooms. Get a 3-bedroom apartment complexes at least. We have a more likelihood of getting larger families to come to town, which will help the schools, where people living in the city. I wish we could leverage that to them instead of doing this.
I think we've
They get
spoken
$1.8
it to them.
million.
I think they're aware, and I know they said they were gonna look at that, especially possibly for phase 2, if I remember correctly. Granted, phase 1 and 2, they're looking at maybe doing together. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what exactly they come up with, but I do share your concern that it'd be nice to have a little bit there, but it's also a private development. You can't push too hard, I guess, but 3-bedroom apartments, at least a couple would be nice. Obviously, it's their money on the line. It's easy for me to sit back here and say that, but I guess they got to know what their demand is.
I understand the theory behind, that'll help with utilities and everything, but really not really, because there's roughly 6,000 houses in the city of Two Rivers. And say we're gonna have 100 people moving in there, 100 units. Well, if you were taking an expensive utility bill and you divide that savings up over everybody, it comes to about $100 or $1.50 a month. But that's not even counting what their consumption is. So that's kind of not a very good argument, because it's pennies that it would save the taxpayers, literally pennies. So I know when we were talking about giving them the money that was brought up, but it was a poor example.
I think it would save us more than pennies. You also have the utility fees that you can constitute as a tax. On our utility bills that we just raised one at some point, maybe in summer, we raised it by $2. Stuff like that, they're going to also be contributing to and hopefully holding off any future raises, hopefully for a long time, because I don't like to raise those things, but all that helps. I'm not saying it's, oh my God, we're going to be millionaires because of it, but it's certainly a help in the right direction, not the negative.
I did the math, it was $1.50 a household. That was without their consumption, so that's really not much per month to put $1.8 million out there for them. I know. They're still putting money up front.
Okay, any other council discussion?
Just a quick quick comment, of course, you know, let's say one building gets built initially, 59 units of new housing, 59 new households with disposable income to spend in Two Rivers. It isn't all coming to the city, I'll grant you. And face it, single-family homeowners bear the most of our tax burden. But by the same token, that's very good when it comes to supporting businesses. This council has set goals of having a healthy, vital downtown, which that's a big part of our calling card when somebody comes and even looks at considering moving or making an investment here. If your downtown is dog-eared and looks like it's circling the drain, that's a big indication. So I think the council's debated this and probably will debate it further, but there are a number of pluses to more density, more people living in the heart of the community. That's why our neighbors to the south, I'll give them credit there. They've worked hard to have more people living downtown.
Town Apartments is going to help our downtown significantly. When I came out here 3 years ago, that was one of my goals, and I brought it up right away. I know I brought it up to the Bureau's property because that's the first one that came to my mind, and it's been on top of it ever since. We need to find more ways to have people living in downtown, because that is the only way downtown is really going to survive. Walking distance, easy, will help downtown survive. And we got a lot of vacant buildings to fill.
We have challenges with our own, I'll say, younger hires, some of the new professionals that have come on board in the public safety area. And, we want them to live here. The governor and the legislature a few years ago made it so it couldn't be mandated. They've got a 15-mile radius, but to the extent they can be living here, it'd be nice if they could find some apartments that are less than 20 or 25 plus years old to move into. So I'm still very optimistic about this project. We got to keep beating the drum, but respect, takes a majority out of 9 on this body.
Any other council discussion? No. So all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. Motion carries. Thank you very much. On to C, City Attorney's Report on the City Council options for filling the vacancy created by the February 24th resignation of Jason Ring. Recommended action is discussion only. Will be included as an action item on the March 20th, 2023 agenda. And I assume that we're going to go right to the City Attorney. So Jack.
Is it a memorandum? You've probably seen it before, or most of you have, because we've gone through this before. Essentially, what happens when you have a vacancy on the city council is that the city council determines the way in which it is filled. There's actually no obligation on the city's council part to fill that vacancy. It could be left empty, vacant, that is to say, until the end of the term. Then the regular election will see to sitting a new council member at that time. The other options are that the council may itself select someone to fill the vacancy. That's something that has been done before by the council, although the law doesn't really provide us with any information as to how that is to be done. I think in the past we've had notices soliciting, but indicating that interested parties may submit their names to the council. We've had interviews. There are other ways to do it as well, I'm sure. Otherwise, what the council can also do is hold a special election to fill the vacancy, depending on when the special election is held. I guess it would also be possible, I would think, for the council to select someone to hold it until the special election takes place. But again, that's something that's in your discretion. Special election follows the procedure set forth in statute, specifically section 8.50. I discussed that somewhat on the second page of the memorandum. Can either be held, if you are able to follow the deadlines imposed by the statute. It can sometimes be held along with a general election or a spring election. Otherwise, it may have to be held separately. I don't know if it would be possible for a special election to be held in conjunction with the election. Again, that's set forth in the statute, what your timing is, what your deadlines are, what kind of notices must be published by the city in order to hold. That's essentially it, unless there are questions.
I have a question. So we can hold this, can we hold this with the primary for the general election in fall? If there is a primary, or is there no fall election? There is no fall election? Okay, so that answers that question. That's out the door.
Typically, I think you would be able to.
Okay.
But if there is none, obviously you can't.
So this election is essentially the last election of the year coming up here in April? Okay. So then the only way to fill it via an election would be a special election, which would have to be indicated by council.
Or not fill it.
Not fill it.
It's only a year. I personally would just let it go. Was such a process last time. I don't know. Well, that's my feeling. I'd rather just let it go.
Kind of generally share that with you. It was a process. I don't know. Council, that seemed like last time we did this and we went through that the sheet that we graded people on, it seemed like everyone was all over the place. And I mean, the majority of council obviously rules, but it seemed like some people were at opposite ends of the spectrum, no matter what the candidate was. And yeah, it was quite a process. And I mean, I think the only way I would personally would want to fill it would be the special election. But again, that comes at a cost that's currently not in our budget as well. So that's tough as well. I might kind of lean towards what Bonnie's saying there personally.
Either that or we welcome, or, invite back people who've already been on city council. They've already got the.
She voted on by us. Council, you're talking about an election. Yeah. She elected people.
I know. Was it Patrick? We had to fill his spot?
I've done it twice.
And he was appointed. Okay.
We appointed someone after, was it Jack Powalish?
Yeah.
We appointed someone there too. That was,
He was appointed too.
that was for Jack, I believe.
Larry Thomas was appointed when Kurt Andrews resigned. Then
That was the lengthy one.
Then there was a special election on the same date. Yeah, and Jason Ring got elected to a 2-year term, you recall. It was there were just 2 candidates specifically going for that.
To fill that remainder, yeah.
There's basically a little over a year left in the term, and based on how the election calendar lays out, the only way to elect somebody to it would be to incur the cost of a special election.
That's not fair to the taxpayers either.
Council can appoint or council can leave it vacant, I think, as the city attorney's memo points out.
And to lean towards Bonnie on that one. Yes, Jeff.
There's nothing that we could do to have, since we have the election and the first 3 would take the 3-year seat, to have the number 4 person fill that. You know, it would be like the first runner-up.
Oh. Using the results of the April election coming?
Right. 4th person.
I don't know of anything that would prohibit you from doing that. I think that would be within the law.
That would be a council decision, I think, as
Yes,
opposed
it would still be.
as opposed to publicizing it because it's not set up for a 4th person
You'd
to be
still need
selected.
action by the council to that effect.
At that rate, I mean, the citizens are still getting the vote.
I don't think that we can make that as part of the ballot. I think we could, as a council, say that the runner-up we would put in there, but I don't think as far as the voting goes, it could actually be, because it's going to be on the ballot top 3. That's how it always is. That's kind of in the statute that we couldn't take the top 4, but as a council, we could say we are taking that 4th
Yeah, it would be basically a council action. It wouldn't affect the ballot at all. You'd simply vote on the issue whether, or that, a motion that the next runner-up would fill the vacant seat for the balance of the term.
Yes. Not that anyone gets the wrong idea that we can't take the top four. That's not legal. Not from my understanding, not from yours either, I take it, right?
No,
And not from Amanda either.
This
Okay.
is the only election motion you can make is with respect to a special election. But I don't know of anything that prohibits you from saying, by a separate action item on a regular or special meeting, that the person who gets the fourth highest number of votes will be the person to fill the vacancy.
So those are all on the table. Obviously, we're not voting on any of this tonight. This is simply up for discussion and getting a report from city attorney. Greg?
Thought it would be most prudent to first have the discussion. Absent any direction to the contrary, we'll put it on the March 20th agenda for possible council action. Yeah.
Anyone else want to discuss anything here so it's not lengthy? All right, for information only, Greg.
Just a reminder, the next regular council meeting's in 2 weeks on March 20. And the council work session this month on the 27th. Usual date and time, 6 p.m. The agenda may include some other items, but we will have at the front end of the meeting as a guest speaker with the opportunity for some dialogue between city council, police department reps, and him. The director of the Manitowoc County Metro Drug Unit, Lieutenant Dave Remacher. Have heard from council members, including council president, concerns about, the drug problem that plagues just about every community in the country. And yes, we have our share of those issues right here in Two Rivers. So encourage council members to be thinking about questions. The meeting will be live streamed per usual and open for the public's attendance. So we appreciate the outreach to the police department and Lieutenant Remacher's willingness to come here and talk with council.
So thank you, Chief Minor. You listened to my concerns. I appreciate that. And you're on the ball with that, you and Greg, and getting this set up. Much appreciated. We want to nip it in the bud. I know the police department works their tail off to try and get these guys and get them off our streets. So thank you.
Looking back to it, some of the emails between my assistant Lisa and the TRBA reps, and I'm sorry for what appears to be an error on the agenda. The intent, and I don't know if anybody's been contacted by TRBA, but as I understood it, they wanted the candidates here by 6:30, but the actual candidate forum would start at 7 o'clock. We'll confirm that and remind them. It sure would be. I agree. We agree on that one. So I'll get that word out with an email tonight. Thanks. But I'm pretty sure we're 7 o'clock for those two.
All right, thank you very much. No closed session tonight. That'd get you out of here by 7:15. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second? Thank you, Scott. Any council discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you and good night.